have to bear with me. I'm not used to doing some admin work, but can people see the agenda?
Yes, we can.
Okay, fantastic.
Okay. So welcome everybody to the meeting. My name is Ben Molyneux. I'm a GP and I'm the Associate Medical Director for Primary Care. I don't normally attend this meeting, but myself and Sarah, the Managing Director of Primary Care, are going to look after the chairing for the next 3 meetings. So this one, December and January, just while various other processes are ongoing. So I will open by saying I'm not an expert in training hub matters, and I don't know all of you. So I will be doing some learning as we go. My role, I suppose, is to conduct the meeting rather than to provide any particular expertise, because that's what you are all here for. But you're all very welcome, and I think it's a really good thing that we are meeting again and discussing. This is quite an unusual meeting in that Assad is on annual leave at the moment, and the papers weren't circulated in advance. So I can only apologise on behalf of the group that you are coming at this quite cold and you haven't had a chance to look at the papers. So we'll do our best to run through things as and when needed. What I would say actually is that a lot of the conversation I was expecting to have is not based on the detail of the papers, but more about ways of working. So it's perhaps less unfortunate than it might normally have been that we haven't seen the papers. I recognise it's not always appropriate, but if people can have their cameras on, that's always welcome. It's easier, especially somebody who doesn't know everybody, to put faces to names. I'm going to make an assumption that most of you or all of you know each other already, so you probably don't need to do introductions. But if you wouldn't mind just saying who you are and where you're from for my benefit, that would be wonderful. Otherwise, I know some but not all, and I don't want to get it inadvertently wrong. So thank you in advance for that. We have had a couple of apologies. So we just heard Zara has a clash today and Assad's on annual leave. Are there any other apologies that we need to pick up that people know about? And then I'll come to you in a second, Ekramel.
I think William also declined. I don't have the other list, Ben. Assad would, so I'd have to, because he was locked out of his NHS account. I don't know how many he's had there.
Okay, fine. Well, we can pick that up after the event and compare who should have been and who isn't. Ekramel, do you want to come in?
Yeah, sorry, it's just my car. I've just literally parked my car, so I'm walking up to my house. And I'll put my camera on in a few minutes. Is that okay?
Fine. Just like it's fine if you are eating lunch,
Yep.
cheekily making a cup of tea while you listen in. That's all okay. It's just as and when you can have your camera on, it's appreciated. I've certainly been a culprit myself of not having a camera all the time. Okay, we're not going to run through declarations of interest, but can you make it clear if you have a declaration of interest to raise with us if there's anything that comes up that you think we need to know about? That said, most of the agenda probably has conflict elements to it, so we just need to be practical. We don't need everybody to list everything every single time. I think the last time the group met was in June, so I am going to run through the actions, but I wonder if some of these might have just time elapsed. So we'll see how we get on. Shule, are you able to pull up the actions? Jyoti, sorry.
I can do that. Oh gosh, I'm going to try.
It's really good training. So this is CPD.
It is terrible, isn't it? Yeah, baptism of fire, rather. I can't find it. I'm really sorry. Gosh. Oh, I'm going to kill us.
So I'll start going through. Don't worry, Mary. I'm going to say the optimistic words of we may not need the full time allotted, but now I've said it, we'll definitely run late. Brilliant. Okay.
Am I sharing something?
You are. We can see it. Got it.
Okay, fantastic. Ben, can I just say that a lot of these actions actually are they were because we're resetting the whole thing now. The resetting how we're working. These were actions from. Shouldn't have been really actions for the board. There were actions with, reflecting the general working and the general issues that we had. Yeah. So some of these are within the action plan that will be covered. In fact, actually, all of them are in the action plan that would be covered with the FedNet. So I don't know whether we just.
I'll canter through them briefly, and just we can say that we've reviewed them. Otherwise, rather than just saying we abandoned them. So. The first one is about ways of working, your rights being picked up. Second one about terms of reference. So the plan is for the terms of reference to be discussed either the December or January meeting. So we can close that one because it's in the forward planner. Conflict of interest. I don't know if that has been done or not, but I think it's important that everyone in the group has completed the declaration of interest. So I think we should keep that one open and aim to get that done before the December meeting. Training hub input, that's about budgets. We've got budget on the meeting today, a discussion about that. So let's close the action 4. Action 5, specific dates about action, non-action to due. Yes, that probably would have been helpful to today's discussion. Let's close that one. Contract variations. I'm just going to make an assumption that's in the budget discussion today, so let's close that one. PMO function, I think that's again in the action plan. Before I read them all out, let's have a look if there's any that can't be closed and reset. I mean, the one about what the partnership model looks like in the NEL strategy is pretty vague. I'm not sure if that's helpful to keep at this point, or perhaps that's a discussion for a future meeting.
It's in the action plan. Yeah, sorry, Shiraz.
What was that, Shiraz?
Yeah, sorry, it's part of the action plan, so we could close this. It's sitting within the action plan.
Fine, okay. I think looking at these, let's mark them all as done, and we can start a new set if people are happy with that. Even though we haven't actually done some of these things, I think they've been captured in subsequent events. Is everyone happy with that?
Yeah, and these are quite old, so things have moved on since July,
okay.
June.
I think it's just important to say that we looked at them, we've closed them, we've moved on, rather than we didn't look at them. So brilliant, thanks very much. So the next substantive item is on work streams. The proposal was to share the global NEL project tracker that lists all of the projects. I assume, but don't know if all of you are familiar with it and have seen it, or because presumably you're submitting elements of it that go into the global tracker. But I don't know if this is routinely shared. From my perspective, coming at this cold, this was a very large Excel spreadsheet that's actually quite impenetrable for the layperson to understand. And I wasn't clear from early discussions with Asad and Jyoti about how we're managing the list, how we identify the RAG ratings, what the criteria are, who decides that, which ones we need to pull out. So if we've got 120 work streams, it's not practicable to run through them all every time. So how do we as a group prioritise picking up the ones that are in the red, potentially some ambers, but also highlighting good practice around KPIs, so project trackers. So, I mean, Jyoti flashed it up. I'm going to make an assumption that you sort of know what I'm talking about. You've seen it before. If anyone has never seen a project tracker and doesn't know what I'm talking about, we can flash it up and take you through an example. That's absolutely fine. But in the interest of time, I won't do that unless you ask me to. So really, my purpose today was I'll pass over to Jyoti to start with, and then I'll allow Shiraz to come in a minute. But it was really to ask the question of how do we collectively assure ourselves that our projects are on track. We've got the project tracker tool, but what is our mechanism for being confident that we're doing the work that we've been commissioned to do? So that's the exam question for the afternoon. Jyoti, did you want to take us through anything in particular, or talk about the rationale of how we've got to where we are in terms of the tracker?
So Ben, just to say, we've always had a tracker, and it was the role of the PD to update it. Unfortunately, because of all what was happening, it hasn't been updated. So even if I share it, it's not an up-to-date tracker. What the tracker does have is the project, what's it aligned to, what the funding was, and actually how much has been spent, but also who the clinical lead and the manager lead was, and the RAG rating. I'm going to just look at the managers here. It was sort of almost self-assessed RAG rating, because they were delivering. It was, the projects are mainly for delivery, but also it had a column for any risk or mitigations, etc. This was something in the old world we would go through at every program board. Admittedly, we haven't done so, which is why we're resetting. But the discussion really here is to ensure that the tracker gives us a complete picture of exactly what is happening in NEL Training Hub with all the projects, whether they're complete or not, etc. So I'm just going to stop there and just ask for any questions in terms of what we were using it for and points of clarification. But yep, sorry, Chair, I'll let you chair this one.
That's great. Ekmel?
Yeah, no, I agree. There's quite there's too much. I mean, we can't go through everything at every single meeting. Two suggestions I think we could use the next couple of meetings for, or a platform for, is think about how we group
the activities, so that maybe if we can identify 4, 5, 6 different groupings that fit into the different categories, with the 120 or however many projects there are. And the second point is more around showcasing, and one is around showcasing particular good practice or project. And also where we're struggling with individual projects, maybe we could come to this group, give a high level update and any suggestions and feedback. I'm just thinking aloud how you'd manage something like this normally. So I think this space could be quite a good reflective space, not the whole meeting, but part of the meeting, to highlight some of that going forward.
Thank you. So from my understanding at the moment, recognising that the tracker as is not up to date, how are each of the training hubs assuring themselves that their projects are up to date, spends are online, in terms of forecasting, evaluation, dare I say, and outcomes measurements? I just would like to know from the group, from the training hubs themselves, how are you doing that day to day, and how can you share that meaningfully with the NEL group so that we can share the learning? Truly.
I think in terms of talking for Newham Training Hub, we have regular meetings with the finance colleagues in terms of financial monitoring of the programs that we are actually supporting and managing. So we are very clear in terms of the budget, up-to-date spend, whether we are expecting any underspend, and making sure that we are not overspending as well. So that is monthly meetings that we have with the finance meeting in all the programs and projects that we are actually managing. So we are up to date with that. That we feed into our monthly reporting of the projects, not necessarily separate from this sheet that has been flashed out. And that information is actually exist within each project, and then we give also project details in terms of activities, the outcomes and outputs, and where we are at. Hence the reason why we actually then can rate and agree what the project kind of, red, green or amber from that. As we do all that and submit all that information, that needs to be pulled into this document, I think, and that can be done with our kind of, connecting to our program director, but also as Shiraz put into the chat, that needs to align with Wazim's spreadsheet. So then the financial information is aligned, as well as project information is aligned. So I guess what I am saying is that from our point, there are regular meetings with the finance team. We are up to date, and also we are actually reporting on each project on a monthly basis on the program template. So that should all, in fact, the information should be there and it is up to date.
Thanks, Shule. Can I ask, do each of the training hubs complete that in the same way? Do you have a template that you all use that comes into NEL to consolidate? So we don't need to do that piece of work. That's standardized already.
Yeah, there's a template, yes.
Okay. And in terms of, so it sounds like there's a self-assessment on RAG rating for the programs. Is there a standardized assessment criteria for the RAG rating, or how does that work for each training hub? And is that something that we should look at?
Well, Ben, we're waiting for you to bring people in. So when none of us are saying anything until you say.
So Ekravel, then Shiraz.
I was going to make a point about project initiation, and when we put proposals forward, that should always include our desired output and outcome. So that should always match and be consistent, reviewed obviously if required, but match and be consistent across the duration of a delivery of a project. And that should also have our approach to evaluation and impact assessment as part of that. So it shouldn't be something that is an afterthought, but it should be from the initiation stage, which I think we do include that, to be honest with you. In terms of assessment, it's kind of, there's a lot of self-perception here, obviously, because some of the programs vary quite significantly in terms of the content and the way of delivery. Some things could be just recruitment based, for example, whereas other things could be just delivering a big CPD program where you just want bums on seats and good quality on the feedback of the training, for example. So I think that would vary. It may be sometimes a bit challenging to assess consistently, given that the projects can be very different. Saying that, I don't think it's something that we should avoid and something that we should not strive to make it as consistent as possible. But a lot of it does depend on what we said we'll do and are we doing it? Are we on track? And if we're on track, that's a green. If we're nearly on track, then maybe that's an amber. Obviously, if you're struggling, then that's a red. And I don't really know how much space there is to make improvement. Probably there is. I can't think right now, but it's something that requires constant review and reflection, I think.
Okay, Shiraz then, Layla.
Yeah, no, thank you, thank you, Akram. I think, yeah, I think joining on some of the points that have been made in the chat, I think what we, in answer to your ultimate question, Ben, is it's probably that we do need to work on how do we appropriately have a standardized RAG rating, reflecting some of the nuanced type of work that goes on, and actually how some of them are very black and white in terms of achievables, and some of them are a little bit more softer. But I think there is something about understanding what are the potential deliverables against the WT&E KPIs, and then understanding how that program of work progresses, and then actually starting to measure some of those hard outcomes. If they were already usefully articulated at the very beginning, then that allows the program delivery program director person and that PMO team to then make assessments against the original agreed intention. And I think that's what we need to be really black and white about it as much as we reasonably can. But definitely, I believe that there is room to be more black and white than what we currently have now. So in conclusion, the answer is yes, we do need to work on how do we have as much of a standardized RAG rating as possible, and not necessarily leave it to self-assessment, but recognizing that sometimes there is definitely benefit in self-assessment for some of the softer pieces of work that training hubs do.
That's really helpful. Thanks, Shiraz. Layla?
Sorry, I couldn't unmute. I think we need to consider with each of the projects from the outset, where is it that they need to be fed back to and monitored? Because I think there's more intricacies than what we've discussed here, because depending on the type of program, you might want it to be reviewed at place. I think there might be some programs in terms of, I think particularly the workforce programs, if that's going to be linked to fuller and delivery at place, we need to think about whether that's going to be squared off there, because I don't want everybody to have to take the same things to place groups and then also at this group.
Thanks, Layla. That's really helpful for everybody. Okay, so it sounds like we've already got a standardized template that everybody's using. Great, tick that one off. It sounds like we don't have a standardized method for RAG rating. And perhaps that's an action we should take away is, can we reasonably set out some objective measures that we all adhere to? And then thirdly, do we need to review the balance of self-determined RAG rating versus assurance across providers? And certainly from an ICB perspective, I think that is essential for us to have confidence in the process. So I think that's another action. We need to develop a process for that. I don't think it needs to be high bureaucracy, manual intervention, checking each other's homework, but I do think there needs to be a levelling to that. And hopefully, if we get that balance right, Layla, we can balance the need for place-based discussion versus NEL-based discussion. So I can see, for example, if there is a requirement for all training hubs to do the same project, that's RAG rated once at NEL. If actually it's a place-derived work stream that's got no impact or bearing or similarity to another training hub, then that probably needs to be done locally, and we just need to be informed about it. So I appreciate there is a nuance there, but it sounds like at the moment we don't have enough of a robust process to be confident at any level. So that would be a step forward. And I liked the discussion around in the chat around thematic analysis. Again, I'm not familiar with the spreadsheet, but I think it would be helpful to be able to, with some Excel wizardry, isolate all the projects in a training hub, all the projects within a theme, all the projects that are WTE funded, etc. So that probably just needs somebody's a whiz on Excel more than anything else. But I think that would just make it a more approachable document that's more useful for us. And the final thing I think we probably need to take away from this is who owns the document. Is it something that can be shared in a Teams that is regularly updated by the group, or do we need to have NEL Training Hub oversight? I'll leave that one open, but I think that's something else we need to be clear about, because that's quite a big task and perhaps more than one person can reasonably do. So how do we share and delegate reasonably? So I guess those are my summary points on this discussion. Does that sound fair, and does it sound like a reasonable approach? We may not get this done by December, given that Asad's on leave right now and the next meeting's in 3 weeks, but it's a direction of travel. Does anyone not agree with that, or feel like we've gone in the wrong direction on project tracking?
So Ben, just checking, so moving forward, once the process is set, are we discussing just the red RAG rated projects and seeing what the mitigations or feedback, or just because that was one of the questions I think Ikram will raise as well, so moving forward?
I mean, again, this is my first meeting of this group and I don't know how busy your agendas are, but I would normally expect in any kind of risk register for the reds to be discussed at every meeting, and consideration of the ambers depending on urgency. So perhaps that's a reasonable starting point, is we commit to at least reviewing all of the reds each time. And if that's cumbersome, fine, and if it's not, then great. And we've got a showcasing section, I think, as a standing item on the agenda, so perhaps rather than looking at the greens in the project tracker, we can pull one or two of them out each time to talk about successes. Is that reasonable?
Yep.
Okay. The next item I think was going to be quite similar, which is around KPIs. So presumably you're all fairly familiar with the process that 6 monthly, I think, WTE has a requirement for benchmarking. So each training hub submits to NEL, and then NEL collates and sends off. So I think there's a KPI working group. Is that right?
So we've just established that, Ben. It was an idea that we had in September, but given all the other bits that were happening, the first meeting is, I think, in next week or the week after, something like that. So it's just been set up. And the idea is really to look at our last annual visit, what Rachel asked us to do was to compare ourselves to London in relation to the KPIs, but also to look at the trajectory. So we want to just develop a narrative in relation to that, which we will bring back to the board, because it's a paper we need to submit to WTNE as well.
Thanks, Josie. I think that's really helpful. So I last week I scanned through the draft that Training Hubs has submitted to the NEL team to collate, and I was left with that same feeling, Jyoti. They were moments in time, and they were numbers that didn't really have any context attached to them. So presumably HGE has that context, but I think from an ICB perspective, it was very difficult to understand if we're on a positive or a negative trajectory. Where have we come from? Where are we going to? Is 5 PAs the right number for that particular domain? Should we have had 20 or 50 or 1? It was quite difficult to understand that and pull that out. So again, I think if the group haven't met yet, Jyoti, then we're perhaps jumping the gun slightly in terms of the expectations. But I think, again, coming from an ICB perspective, I think and we know that we don't have enough money from STF for workforce elements next year. There's going to be a lot more scrutiny about each of the work streams and how we're adhering to the KPIs. So it's just good to kind of socialise that now and know that there's going to be more pressure on us all to justify the spend. So having that really useful narrative and context, Jyoti, amongst the KPIs would be really helpful to understand, because we know that our training hubs are in different positions and the needs of our communities are different. So it's not even that you can say 5 in City and Hackney is the same as 5 in Havering. That may not be true. So we need to include that and recognise that there are funding differentials that flow from that, etc. So I don't know who's going to be convening that group, Jyoti. Is that yourself and Asad?
So we've just had initial conversations. We've got a date, but nothing else. And this is the first platform that we were going to raise it in, that there's something we want to move forward. So Shiraz, it wasn't to keep anybody in the dark. It was purely just a thought that we've had for a long time, just to standardize from each of the localities as to what they're doing, but more importantly, to build on an action plan and developmental plan based on the KPIs.
Great, thanks for clarifying. Ekram?
Yeah, just to add to that, when I read the messages that Asad was trying to coordinate, I got the impression that we're almost setting a self-scrutiny type session for ourselves, really, more than anything. So are we doing the right things? What does it look like? Well, exactly what you said earlier on, Ben. But what I take one step further, actually, in terms of the ICB engagement and involvement and steering some of this, is it something that we should be waiting for the ICB to tell us, or are we looking at reassuring the ICB that we know the direction we're traveling? Which one would it be? So if we told yourself, Layla, and others, look, this is what we've set up for the next year, 2 year, 3 year, whatever period, and that reassurance is what you're seeking, instead of ICB telling us, oh, NEL Training Hub, this is what you need to do and this is what we expect from you. I think that bit of the conversation, if we iron it out, would be quite helpful. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Yeah, you are. I think it's both, actually. So I think that so a proportion of the system development funds, SDF, so that's broadly broken down, is primary care development, but it's broadly broken down into workforce, digital, and staff costs, and a couple of other domains. So for those elements of it, recognising that training hubs get funding from multiple sources, from the ICB perspective, I think next year or in the next 6 months, we would set out, we expect X, Y, and Z to happen on workforce with these funds. And we would then want to say, we, the ICB, would want to be assured that that work has been done. So that I think would be helpful. But at the same time, there's loads of work that goes on outside of the SDF funding envelope that training hubs are doing, which is often synergistic with that. So we would want to be notified, informed about the other elements of the work that might support that. So I think it's both of those elements, Ekram. It's not just training hubs come up with it and then we listen to it, or we come up with it and training hubs, it's a dialogue. And I think it sounds like the KPI group might be a useful place to start. Again, it's about harmonizing what people are doing so that when we're coming for the 6 monthly KPIs, it's not a surprise. We're not scrambling around for the numbers. We actually know where we were going with that. We've got a strategy behind it. It might be that is beyond the scope of the KPI group. It may be that this group needs to do some of that. But I think until we've got this group back into its rhythm, we've got the KPI meeting set up, we'll just have to take that as it comes, possibly. Layla.
I think Ekram's comment is valid, because I think it's been quite difficult to come up with meaningful plans at place without having the direction from NEL in terms of what are the main objectives. And I think it's because we're still in a very early phase in terms of the fuller program to look at the people element, because that's where I think some of this is going to be pulled together. And I know that Anna's got a few of the fuller project managers, and I believe there's somebody else that's due to start imminently. And I wonder if they can, I believe they'll be aligned to people. So I wonder if they can help with looking at some of this NEL place training hub loop and making sure that our plans are meeting those priorities.
Yeah, again, I think that's really helpful, Layla. We've had a lot of time restructuring in the ICB and staff being moved around and redundancies, and that's been a real distraction. But also there's been a fundamental question about where workforce sits, because we currently have a primary care workforce team, and then we've got the ICB workforce team, and then we've got training hubs, and training hubs have got their own arrangements with WTE and us and potentially other sources. So it's complicated, and we do need to, I think, work out over the next 12 months how the relationship between locality training hubs and their place can mature, and then how that can then interface meaningfully with the NEL groups, so that we do things in a coordinated fashion. And that is going to be a perennial tension with place-based working, is how much gets decided at what level. And I think we should expect there to always be a healthy tension there and a dialogue that happens at every meeting probably about, well, actually, is that NEL or is that place? I think that's useful. I don't think we'll ever get to a place where we've decided that in advance. But I think that is a challenge for training hubs for the next 12 months, is how do you integrate meaningfully with the place-based partnerships to align yourself with their requirements and needs, and how do you align yourself with NEL ICB and its requirements and needs? And then this group is the gel that brings them together, I would hope. We're just putting a lot of pressure on this group, but you know, I'm sure we're all up for it. Okay, that sounds like we've probably made as much progress around KPIs as we can, and we can pick that up next time. Is it realistic for that group to have met before the December meeting, Jyoti?
Definitely,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so watch this space for the inaugural meeting of that group, and then we'll hopefully have an update at the next meeting of this group to understand what got discussed and how far that's got. Brilliant. Okay, whizzing through. Next one, approvals. So I think there were two elements to this. One, I think historically people have brought all the business cases and we've kind of waved them through to make sure that there's been some sort of high level scrutiny. I think there's one leadership case that we wanted to bring today, but given that nobody has seen it, Jyoti, I'm a bit reluctant to say that we can have a robust discussion on that, and maybe it's better to defer that to the December meeting. I
agree, Ben, actually, yeah.
Okay, because I think there's a call for the health inequity funds to be, so I think a couple of training hubs have submitted, but the others haven't, so we wanted to get them all in and then review them for next month as well. Is that right?
So Ben, it's not health inequalities, it's health equity focused learner expansion program, WTNE. So it's about increasing placements and capacities and educator numbers, not health inequality, which I know we confused you completely during the pre-meet as well. So apologies for that, but it's a different project and we're waiting for all the training hubs. So just to emphasize that's come through a predetermined cost in terms of the admin cost and the delivery cost. What we need to agree is the plans at this board, which is what we expect the localities to bring through. So WT have already set what the payments would be.
Great. So I'm going to have a very brief hypothetical conversation because we don't have any cases to look at. But again, coming to this cold and reviewing a couple of the draft business cases that we aren't discussing today, I was a little bit concerned about the lack of detail around finances and the transparency that arose from it, or lack thereof. So I think going forward, certainly while Sarah and I are chairing the meeting, there's an expectation that if there are any numbers included, that we're very clear about how they've been costed. I don't think it's appropriate to say admin X number, project costs X number, and no further detail behind it, because as we get into next year with STF funding being really squeezed, there'll be an expectation of, well, what level of admin is that? Is that a band 6? Is it band 8A? How many hours do you expect them to be working on this project? Over what period of time? And therefore, what is the cost? Likewise, if there's clinicians involved, what level of clinician is it? What banding are they on? Is it a set rate? Is it an expectation of hours per week? Is it project work? And it doesn't really matter how many hours they do. It's got to get done in 12 weeks, and that's the envelope. If there are overheads included over and above what you've already got in terms of staff running costs, I think you need to be really explicit about that. Just saying admin on top probably isn't acceptable, because we've got staffing arrangements in place for all of the training hubs already. So I think we need to understand when and why we would need additional admin support for any projects. So it's just to set out really vaguely, because we don't have any papers to go through today, but just coming at it from the ICB perspective, knowing the screws are going to get turned on finances, it's really important for any proposals for approval to have that level of detail in them. Likewise, in terms of the actual proposals, they need to be as detailed as possible. It probably isn't enough to say, we'll run webinars. What's the intended outcome? What's the benefit? What's the measurable effect that happens as a result of those? If we're employing staff, what's the intended benefit and how will we know that we've achieved it, etc. So it's just more work for everybody. I apologise for that, but I think that level of scrutiny is really important for us to make sure we're spending every pound as effectively as possible, and also sharing the learning where things have gone well, because if there's not that much detail in the proposals, it's really hard at the end to know, did that work? Can we share that? Would that work in another locality? And if not, why not? So it's a challenge to everybody. I think we're going to have quite a few proposals, business cases next month. So it's just to give you some fair warning that I think Sarah will say the same as I will next time around, so that we're all clear about it. And that might be a bit of a bumpy road, but that's the purpose of reconvening and restarting. Hopefully that hasn't put the cat amongst the pigeons too much. Shiraz.
No, thank you, Ben. And I think it's a very useful point. You can see lots of people nodding towards it. So I think we just need to then start to, at the right time, start to embed some of the important things to make that happen. So I think number one is about making sure there's an understandable consistency of the business cases and the proposals, and it follows a template and what is the level of detail. I think number two is we should all collectively agree on what is the appropriate detail, only so that it's a useful reference for the finance team, so they understand that actually the detail is provided, one within the proposal, but then number two is that something that will eventually sit within the financial tracking and whatever documentation and backing that might be needed to be recorded against it. So I think it's really good that you've set the scene, and I think let's collectively think about what is the detail, what are the standards, any particular templates that we want everybody to use in terms of a proposal, and what are the key things that the program director would need to assess against, Joyty within her role, and actually everybody else really understands what that playing field will look like. So let's spend some time, not now, but at the right point in time, to flesh some of these out and agree that as a baseline standard.
Ekramil?
Yeah, just an extension to that. I think it's quite important that the business model of the NEL and the 5 locality hubs is understood as well by the system, ICB, not just ICB, but the whole system. Because I think everyone agrees that the resources that have been allocated historically were never enough, especially in the last few years. And we need to work smart and think about how we support, as a system, our training hubs to be sustained and developed and grown in that process. And I think it's not about us and you and us or two parties, it's about the system, and we're an enabler in that system. That's all we are. I mean, the way I look at it anyway. So there's a similar conversation which needs to be had at the same time around how that develops, and that could be a wider OD conversation. But I think understanding that is really important initially, because we all have slightly different setups in our locality areas as well, and we come with different not resources, infrastructure backing. So I come back. I'm also about the GPK group. It's a big organization, and I'm probably able to do certain things that maybe other locality hubs are not able to, and that's my advantage, obviously. So we need to understand that there are some nuances around that as well, which will have to be tied into the future investment and business development of what we decide to go forward.
Thanks, Ekramil. That's really helpful. Before I pass back to you, Jyoti, I think there is a skeleton template for business cases, isn't there? It's more about how deeply it's populated, but I'll be happy to be corrected on that. And if you've got any reflections on what Ekramil just said, I guess what you're really pointing out is the admin elements that are being added in. Is that because you don't feel there's enough structural capacity in the teams and it's done on a project by project basis? I think that was the inference. And if that is the case, how do we either acknowledge that transparently or plan for it in advance effectively so that we don't need to factor that in each time? And that's, you don't have to answer that now, but if you have got a quick answer for that, Jyoti, that would be brilliant.
I'm just wondering, Ben, if because all the training hubs get infrastructure money to deliver certain bits, would it be helpful for the team here to understand what the infrastructure buys, what it pays for? And then if there's an add-on, then they can make a judgment on if this is additionality or duplication. Because without that basic understanding of what goes into the localities and what that's paying for currently to deliver, because that's purely for the KPIs, the HE KPIs. And then if there's another project or paper presented, then to explain it every time, I think it might just be a lot of effort. So really getting that grounding, maybe we can, I don't know, I'm looking at the training hub PMs here to see if that we can do a paper to just demonstrate that. Maybe for next time or January, as to what the infrastructure money is and what it pays for.
I think that, well, again, coming at this new, I think that'd be really helpful for external audiences, but also because there's an inevitable annual merry-go-round of funding. There's a bit of extra here, there's a bit, so to know what the bare bones are and what that gets us for each training hub, I think will be really helpful to provoke those further conversations if we want to have additional work via the training hubs. So great, thank you. I'm deliberately saying action here so that because it's being recorded, somebody goes, I'll write that one down. But that'd be it. Brilliant. Okay. Thank you. Right. So we've got the next one, and again, I don't know how much detail we're going to get into, but I'm finding this helpful as a general conversation. Hopefully others are as well. WT&E action plan updates and budget updates. I will hand over to, as well, I was seeing Shiraz for this, but should we separate them out and do the action plan update as much as there is first, and then budget second?
Fantastic. I can do the action plan update first. So there was an action. Out of the various things that needed to be resolved between the Federation as a host holding that contract, our partner locality training hubs, and actually the whole collective team, so the PMO as well. So the PMO team and what's made up within that. There was a list of objectives that we really needed to try and unpick and get to some sort of a resolution within 3 months. Those issues were kind of brought together. WT&E combined the two and created an action plan, and that's what we've been working towards. Now, there are around 6 main themes that we want to try and manage. And those themes are heavily linked to the HEE contract that the Federation is hosting and obviously is being provided in partnership and collaboration with all of the training hubs. And the plan of action is to start to tackle those 6 issues across weekly meetings. We've had 1 meeting so far, which really set the scene in terms of what we want to try and achieve over the next 3 months. Everybody has an understanding of what are those themes that we need to really unpick and help to conclude one way or another, even if in initial stages. And so the first meeting really talked about the landscape setting and to have a look at the SLA, which is obviously the SLA between the Federation as an organisation and the delivery partner, just to really embed the collaboration that needs to happen to provide the North East London Training Hub. So very useful conversations which are all minuted, and those minutes have been circulated around for review. And what we hope to have is a revised SLA that reflects a lot of the learning that has happened over the past sort of 20 months. And then that will go around to everybody for comments more than anything else. And hopefully that will be a revised SLA that makes sense. The SLA will also enable a particular locality to draw down the infrastructure funding that they haven't drawn down for particular reasons, and we're really talking about 2 years worth for one locality hub and 1 year for another locality hub. We had a follow-up meeting on the Monday just gone, and that was really then to unpick the finance arrangement. So actually, the conversations about what is the current financial position for North East London Training Hub, what will be the financial model for bodies of work, and actually how do we have, as best as possible, a singular version that allows North East London Training Hub to do what it does, particularly disbursements and paying off of invoices and paying that down to fellows and everybody else within the North East London environment. After the meeting on Monday, we're going to summarise a lot of the conversation and then have a singular proposal, which is a hybrid approach, and that hybrid being that some training hubs will manage some of the programmes wholly as much as reasonably possible without creating extra work for anybody. And secondly, there may well be a percentage-based system for other bodies of work, which are a lot more complicated, and that's for North East London Training Hub to manage centrally. We've got some further meetings planned, ideally every Monday, so weekly, to really start to tick off these issues and then start to work them through. We've got fortnightly updates that I ultimately currently now create, and then Jyoti will review them just to make sure it's kind of factually accurate. And obviously Jyoti shares it with everybody, so everybody kind of sees that, and then that gets submitted to WT&E. And lastly, we as a host have monthly meetings with WT&E just to you know, help them understand how things are going, any particular challenging things, and any support that we particularly need as a host. Which thankfully we haven't needed to use, so that's great. And then lastly, we have the ability just to have WT&E help us directly with some particular meetings if we've got something challenging, but again, we haven't needed that to date. So that's the action plan. If anybody needs to have sight of the action plan, so Ben, I don't know whether anybody within ICB land needs to have plan. I'm quite sure it's around one way or another, but that's easily shared. And if I've missed anything, do let me know. But that's really the action plan update, if that's okay.
Thanks, Shiraz. Should we take Jyoti and to add anything and then open up to the group?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Shiraz, my understanding was that there was an ask from WT&E that it does get shared. So I think just be good practice if action plan.
It is, it is.
It gets shared with the ICB. Yeah. So just.
Oh, forgive me. With the ICB.
That was my understanding.
Fine. They haven't articulated that to us, but no harm.
But exactly, I don't think there's harm. And there's just a second bit, Shiraz, in terms of the SLAs and the payments. I think we had a timeline for that for a week, or I'm not sure where we are, but also to, you know, flag the risk of the localities not getting paid. I don't know where we are because they've obviously got, you know, a couple, you've just mentioned one locality hasn't got paid for 2 years. They've got staff, etc. So we just need to make sure that that's probably in our risk register. I know they are in the locality risk registers and how they survive without the payments.
Of course, Jyoti. So just to be clear, and I'll keep it really quick because I know you don't want to get into too much detail, Ben, and all. With regards to one locality training hub, so there was an overall agreement that to draw down the HEE at that time infrastructure money, a locality training hub needed to articulate the actual staff in the locality post to draw down the particular funding to pay for those roles. So really clearly defined roles, and obviously the locality training hubs would have them. For the first year, as we were working through this new landscape and actually the new relationships, what we said as a host was that once we received the funding, we would just pass that first year straight to the localities, as long as they're able to give some, you know, core named individuals for those 3 posts. And all of the localities ultimately did that, apart from one locality, which you know had a different understanding on the relevance of providing names for those 3 roles, and so that locality did not avail the same opportunity to draw down the first year's infrastructure funding. The last meeting that we had on the Monday, read the SLA, I said that was always available to that locality, and they should just provide that bare minimum information. No need for any further backing documentation for that first year, nor for any particular narratives, just the 3 names, and they can draw that down. And that has always been available to that locality since the beginning of Federation hosting it, and since the beginning of us holding that money. So just to be really clear, the first year was always available. There was just a process that they needed to follow. And for that same locality, the same issues are there, and that's why they haven't necessarily drawn down the second year in the same way that the other localities have. But again, this is really about, and I think we touched upon this in our last meeting, is how do we assure ourselves that the WT&E infrastructure money that's there to pay for 3 core roles, how do we assure ourselves that they are in post, and then we as a collective are assured that actually you've got a locality that is has an appropriate capacity for delivery at place, and obviously engagements with NEL and WT&E. With regards to the other locality training hub, really there was a question about the relevance and the importance of a program manager of the locality training hub signing an SLA, and so that was bottomed out quite quickly. And secondly, it was just about the reporting that sits within the, whether it was a bit too onerous for the locality, and actually whether we should shift some of that work to the PMO team, and particularly the program director, particularly recognizing that you don't want to duplicate submissions and duplicate reports. And so I personally, I definitely understood that point, and I think it was a relevant point to make, and so we've made those SLA adjustments. And then just to highlight, absolutely, Jyoti, we said that within a week of that meeting, a draft SLA will be shared. And what I did do was just run that by one of my one of the WTNE colleagues, just to sense check it. We're going to do a few more revisions and then get it out to everybody for review. So yeah, that's a very detailed answer to your 2 points.
Thanks, Shiraz. It would be helpful. So I'll check this, but it sounds like it'd be helpful to have the action plan come to the December meeting, or as many updates as we've got, so that we can share it in advance, see what progress has been made. Okay, Layla. Just keep pressing it again and again and again.
Sorry, that was an error hand.
Okay, fine. Great, thank you all. That's really helpful. Apologies if I missed it, Shiraz. It sounds like there's weekly meetings. We're not a million miles from Christmas, and I don't think it's going to be concluded by then, is it? We're going to be heading into the new year. Is that right?
Yes, but we have got 3 months and 6 issues, and hopefully 2 of them knocked on the head one way or another. I think what we all agree on is trying something that makes sense to us now, seeing how it goes, and we can always review it. But I think what WTNE wants to see is at least some progress and some semblance of some agreeables with those 6 particular actions. So totally agree that December gets slow. But I'm actually quite hopeful that everybody's worked really well and been part of these Monday meetings and given extra capacity. So I'm hopeful that we can knock these out and complete the 6 actions.
Okay, great.
Hopefully. Oh, sorry, I saw her in the people, so I said Iman, but thank you, Joycey. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, so budget update, recognising we haven't shared a budget update. So if there's any headlines you wanted to share, and then I was going to have again a similar conversation to we've had previously about what information is useful for the group to know and understand.
So I'll just touch base, but I know it's a finance and I'm nothing to do with finance, but I think what would be useful is to agree on what level of detail would be useful for this meeting, because there's a lot of detail that is held. And if we can all understand how that should be displayed, then we can, one, within a report that's shared as documents before the meeting, and number 2 is what would we like to see in this meeting now. That would be really useful, and then the finance team can then stick to that and provide that. Because otherwise you can definitely go down rabbit holes in terms of data and things. But I'll let Wasim and Azwa come in. They'll have a version. It might be very relevant and it might answer all the questions we want to have right now, or we might need to tinker and tailor it and just let them know. Or we need to collectively agree, really.
Okay.
In terms of the budget, I've already shared a budget summary with all the PMs, and I'll quickly share on the screen what exactly we've got at the moment, which we share with all the PMs. So this is a kind of a summarized information. Just to clarify, this is at NEL level, not at locality levels, because all the localities have their independent financial information trackers. 1 or 2 localities shared with us the detailed of each and every project, but some localities have got their own tracker, which is obviously under their own system. So we don't have oversight of those. So this is at NEL level, what we have received. So I will just quickly describe each and every column to let you know what exactly it means. So the first one is project code, which we are allocated based on the sequence of the project, the way it came to us. Second column is the description of each and every project, what exactly this project means. Then third column is project nature, whether it's project, whether it's a pass-through funding, whether it's an employment. So we categorize into 3 work streams. If it's a pass-through, we just like pass it to the relevant practice or relevant individual, or whether it's an employment hosted by whatever organization, and then whether it's a project-based. And then the next column is live. So whether it's a live project, whether this project has been completed or is been merged or within the another work stream. Then the total funding, whatever funding was allocated against each project. And then planned spend, which is if whatever we've received or whatever was allocated against each project stream has been planned, or whether there's any amount which is unallocated at the moment, and all the PMs and the relevant individuals, they will discuss and then allocate accordingly and let us know that this will be used for a specific purpose. Um, and then the next column is the deficit. If obviously the planned spending is more, then this column will reflect the deficit. Um, and then the next one is all the invoices which we have received to be paid. So all the invoices so far we've received, which needs to be paid out. And then the next column is for all the unpaid invoices, which are outstanding to be paid. Like in this way, for example, infrastructure funding is a prime example. 615K we've received, all the allocation we have received, so it's fully planned. 615K invoices has been received. Only one invoice is outstanding, and then any uninvoiced balance. This column will reflect whatever invoices we are still waiting to be received. And then the notes reflect the some of the additional information. For example, this is 713K we've received, how this funds allocated against each locality, what are the further breakdowns, how much payments we have already made, and how much is outstanding. So this is the basically information at NEL level which we are holding, based on the actual bank information, actual invoices we've received, and actual invoices we've sent either to HE or ICB. So it's a, as you can see, it's a 3 pages which is showing around 82, but it might have multiple projects. It's over 100. As you've seen in the operational tracker, it captures more or less all those projects which you've initially shown in your presentation, the first operational tracker. And these are the actual total amounts at the end, which are reflecting against each column.
Great, thank you very much for the walkthrough. Do you mind taking down the slide so we can see each other? So I guess I'll start with, are there any questions about the spreadsheet itself? Technical questions, and then we'll move on to a general discussion around what information this group needs. If we could take down the slides when you're ready, that'd be great. Ekramel.
Yeah, so I think there's something. Well, I think Wasim kind of alluded to it. There's this spreadsheet kind of talking to the other one tracker. So there's going to be a strong overlap or connection between the two. This I'm looking at is almost like the bank account. What's with? Am I right? I mean, Wasim, maybe that's not the way to look at it. But I'm looking at what is with the what has come through via the FedNet. And it's all inclusive and comprehensive, or it's meant to be inclusive and comprehensive. The other one is, again, we need to still have finance information on the operational tracker, which is the actual live delivery of projects or projects that have been delivered that needs to be updated. So as long as that's clear in terms of us understanding the different purposes of both those documents, spreadsheets, and its purposes in relation to the finance management, I think they're quite fairly sound in terms of completeness of what's in the system, what has been spent, and what's coming through, from my angle anyway.
So in terms of the operational tracker, which was maintained by Asad, was basically one-to-one meetings, deep dives in which he individually goes through with each PM and reflect each and every action, what exactly happening in the project. So that's kind of a related to KPIs, which was previously been maintained. I think Shule was maintaining, Newham Community Matters were maintaining that tracker, and then us had taken over and then followed that same procedure so that we should have a consistency. This tracker, as it's a financial information, which barely accounting based, and it should reflect the accounting side, what exactly invoices we have received, what invoices we have paid out, which needs to be reconciled with the bank. So this is more or less kind of a financial information, but the other tracker will reflect the more kind of operational KPI related and more kind of a discussion based, where exactly the position of the project at any stage, I think. So that's the kind of a clarity between these two trackers. So one will be maintained by program director and one will be maintained by the finance lead.
As well.
Thank you, Ben. I think it will be fair to say, Akramal, that if you wanted a specific report, perhaps like in addition to operational tracker, like an additional couple of columns, then we can co-design that. If this appears too detailed, then obviously, and if it's not the right report for this forum, then of course we can change that, and we can co-design a report. Operational tracker itself is very detailed, so we can chop a few columns, add a few, and then we can prepare a report that works best for this group. So happy to co-design if that's something that works for everyone. So I would say.
So I think your opening comment, Akramal, was quite. I was in agreement with the level of detail here is perhaps more than this group needs to see each time, because it effectively is a reproduction of the bank account and all the ins and outs, and we probably don't need to or wouldn't be capable of scrutinising that sufficiently, and that's not really the purpose of this group. So I think what we probably need is a more high-level budget. So what are our allocations for the year? What's our year to date? What's our forecast? Is there an overspend or underspend forecast and a year to date? You know, that kind of traditional financial reporting headline figures. And I'm going to make an assumption here that we need a NEL one and one for each training hub, essentially, to know where we're overspent and where we're not. That may need to include some of the projects, but it also may not. It may be just more about what's the overall position for each training hub and NEL training hub. So that, I think, would probably be the level of detail that this group would need to be assured that we're not too far off course with our spending for the year. And then we would need to trust the training at the federation to behind the scenes be on top of that for us and then present us with the narrative instead of the detail. Is that the reflections of others on the call about what they would find useful? So I'm seeing nods. I mean, in month one, that's going to be quite a big piece of work for you to have to do in terms of generating that narrative for the first time. So it may not be possible to do that by December, but if we can aim to do that over the next couple of meetings, perhaps we can iterate. We can have a first attempt for December and a refined version for January, and then once we've got effectively a template that's working, then it becomes probably fairly straightforward to populate each month. But I think that would give us assurance that each of the training hubs is where it should be. Early identification about where there's gaps or where there's over or underspend. And I will ask the question, I don't know if training hubs need to produce their own financial positions or whether you guys have already got that data and you can do that once for everybody. I don't know the answer to that.
I think there's a mix because with some of the training hubs, or a lot of the training hubs, actually those finances are really clearly articulated and clearly recorded within the federation's ledgers, and they're very standardized and industry standard accounting software and processes. So in all honesty, for some training hubs, it's going to be really, really easy. And we just need to, again, figure out how do we do that very efficiently, not to take too much time away from them. But yeah, for some it's easy, for some of them it'll need a bit of unpicking and exploring. Okay.
And I think we'll just have to go on that journey to understand, and I'm also mindful that not everybody's on the call today. So we've created quite a lot of additional work from this discussion today around multiple domains, and I'm mindful of the earlier clarification around how much staff everybody's got, and it's not enough. So, Rome wasn't built in a day, so I don't think anyone's going to mind if not all of this is ready next month, but it's really nice to see the bones of it being fleshed out over time. Any other comments around budget in terms of what people would like to see? And if there are any reflections, we can, I'm sure, pick that up over email. Okay, so that broadly takes us towards the end of the meeting. We've got two things left. We've got Campbell and digital champions, digital facilitators, sorry, about what's been, that's our success story for the day. I just wanted to set a couple of other things up. So I think we are going to send around, because we haven't got yet, a forward planner about things to discuss next month. I think much of today's discussion will be repeated, but with documents. I suspect we'll be going through the business cases that haven't been approved today. Terms of reference are definitely due to be reviewed. I think we're past the 6-month point. but I would suggest we wait until January to do those, because let's wait for the action plan discussions to be nearing completion, rather than have a tour discussion and then we need to rapidly review it again in succession. So if that's okay with everybody. I think we have got dates for the next 2 meetings in the diary already. So if we can aim to get papers out a week before, that would be ideal. So I'm giving everyone notice, you've got 3 weeks for a lot of homework ahead of next month's meeting. And I think that's all the bits I'm supposed to tell you before we wrap up and hear about the facilitators. Shule.
And also, I would like to bring the fellowship paper to the next meeting if the time is going to allow us, because there are issues that I would like to raise, and there are some decisions that needs to be made, etc.
As if by magic.
Would that be okay?
The forward plan has got fellowships, PA update, TNA, which I'm not sure what that is, infrastructure paper and terms of reference. So they're all on the forward plan.
Okay.
So the tours we know we'll do in January. The others we can make sure we do fellowships next time. Thank you. And depending on what the agenda is looking like, we'll get through those over the next 2 meetings. So that's your heads up for what we're going to be talking about and asking for information for in the next week or 2. In that case, without further ado, you've been very patient, Campbell. It's over to you. Tell us what's been happening with facilitators.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's that time. It's the whistle-stop tour of digital facilitation. So believe it or not, like some of you know, you've had to deal with my wonderful face coming on these meetings for the last year now. So I've got a little update as to what we've been up to, and you'd be glad to know I've made one of my wonderful PowerPoints to guide you along the way. So some of you may have had this PowerPoint in your inbox, the lucky ones. If not, then just put it in the chat and I'll happily send it to you afterwards. So here is our wonderful bunch. There is 13 of us, unlucky for some, but it's lucky for us because we're great. You've got me up top there, a nice younger, slimmer picture. Then we've got 2 team leaders. You've got Laura, who was on the call but had to pop off, and Kylie Reid as well. Their background is based either NHS or working in education, which helps us in terms of that facilitation and training side of things. Then we've got our team of facilitators. So we've got 10 actual trainers, and they work either in person, online, virtually, digitally, with practice staff across the whole of North East London. Again, a wide range of backgrounds, anyone from social media experts, website experts, so people that have made and built award-winning websites from scratch, we've got them. We've got ex-practice managers doing some of our clinical training as well. So we're a bit of a one-stop shop really in terms of digital training and support. I'll go on to the next slide. There we go. So this was our kind of when we came into play. This is our aims and priorities. So you can see the 6 bullet points there. Our main aims were to get the workforce in place, to get an improved use of digital tools in primary care settings, the ongoing acceptance, the need to support primary care staff. And the priorities is to work with those practice managers, acknowledge their training needs, and provide training based on that. Then deliver insights into practice, PCNs, boroughs, and NEL-wide to support digital transformation. I'll talk a bit more about that because we've just finished one of our training needs analysis. And then the last one is work closely with Digital First and yourselves, the North East London Training Hub, to provide support on relevant pilots and projects as requested. So here we are in terms of our practice facing. So this is the bespoke one-to-ones. You can see some of our team with the equally happy and delighted people that have received our training support. You can see it's split into 2 different sections. We've got that in-person training and also the kind of virtual and webinars. I'll talk about the webinar shortly, but this is our bespoke training. And what happens here is we have a role, which is the outreach representative. And there's 2 of these. There's one called Sharon, one called Anwar, and they will visit as many practices as they can. I can firmly say that we visit every single practice every quarter, whether they want to see us or not. We turn up and we just kind of assess their day-to-day operations and make some recommendations on training support that can benefit them and streamline their processes going forward. The following subjects tend to be the main ones that pop up. It's the whole Microsoft Office package. I think we're all familiar with Excel, Word, PowerPoint, Outlook, Teams, and SharePoint, but there's some other ones as well which we tap into. EMIS, the never-ending black hole, as I call it, is everything happening. So we cover an array of things on EMIS, website optimization, social media, and OCVC. And the other thing as well is we work closely with all the other facilitation teams across NEL, so the GPIT team, the CEG, Equip, and the Digital Accelerate Change team. So if there's something we don't cover, we've got access to this matrix which shows what all the other teams cover, and then we can signpost accordingly to take that stress away from the practice managers. So this is our kind of uptake so far. which we've got. So requested sessions versus the session delivered. As you can see, this was from till September. I've got our up-to-date numbers on one of the last slides of this, but this was marking our 12 months in post. So that was 657 requests, and then 473 were fulfilled. That was 72% of requests. That's just because there was so much demand. And in a way, like I said, because we've got these outreach roles, they're generating our demand. I think it's like 98% of our demand has come from those two individuals, and 2% has come from either Digital First or the Training Hub or the any of the other facilitation teams. Next slide. Where's it going? There we go. And then in terms of our feedback and responses, like I said, the most 5 common subjects trained, EMIS is our number 1 at the minute, then closely followed by website optimization, and then we enter the world of Microsoft. And of that, it's nearer the 70-30 split now, but back in September, it was about 60% were favoured to be in person, and 40% were held virtually. But like I said, there's now a 10% more in person. And in terms of our feedback, we're all in the mid to high 90s. So they rate us either 4 or above out of 5. They feel more confident trained on, and they feel our training style is at a suitable level and pace. Again, use our system and would recommend our training to a colleague. And you can see our training sessions delivered per month. We had like a whopping June, but what we found then is what we gained in numbers for teaching, we lost in our quality. So that's why we've gone back to that steady climb. And then likewise, you can see a number of requests and then ones fulfilled. Next slide. There we go. So then we talk about the webinars. For those that haven't been to our webinars, I highly recommend them. They're just an hour long, and they are probably the most interactive webinar you've ever been to. It's filled with gamification to keep the attendees engaged throughout. What we do is, in terms of the topics that we discuss, they are decided by our training needs analysis. So I think I briefly mentioned it, but every quarter we go out and ask as many practices as we can, but we endeavour to go to all of them. Whether or not we get a response is another question, but we go and visit every practice and ask what their most pressing needs are. On average, we get between the third and half the practices across NEL give us a response, but we use these, and then we take like the first 15 or so, the top 15 requested, and they will be the subjects for our next quarter webinars. This is to make sure that we have a decent turnout. I think our record is 73 attendees at one of them, but yeah, they're quite well attended in that one. Speaking of well attended, hopefully on the next slide, it is how many people have attended. So we've delivered 32 webinars to over 200 members of staff. Again, that's changed now. I think we're over 400 members of staff have attended our webinars. So that just shows how much we've started quite small and really expanded over the last 2 months in September. Again, the webinar experience, 4.4 out of 5 on average. The presenter training style, 4.5 out of 5, and 99.3 would recommend our training to a colleague. There was just one person that decided it wasn't for them, but that's okay. We had a one-to-one with them thereafter. And following this with the summer training needs analysis, the most digital requests were website optimization, EMIS, social media, office, and NHS app. We're currently just collating the information we've collected from October, November, which was our autumn training needs analysis, and that will be shared once we've got all that collected. And you can see the spread across all the boroughs there of those that have attended our webinars. And then this here is a practice-facing webinars. Oh, so this is slightly different. So we've also worked on, as well as our webinars, which take place every Wednesday, the next few slides are ones that we've linked, whether it be a digital first program. So this one is with the website optimization workstream, and we delivered 5 webinars on behalf of Mo and the team on that to emphasize the importance of website optimization. And then we'd link with a third party called Iatro on how to make those changes to a practice's website. So then again, the average on them all in the green as far as we're concerned. But I don't settle for anything below a 4 out of 5. And then you can see that's our 73 was our record earlier in this year in May. And then again, attendees by borough for that one as well. Next one I'm going to talk about is the OCVC. So for those that don't know, we found a way, so our team found a way on how to use online consultations using Microsoft Teams and doing it in a safe and secure way. So for those that haven't got a provider or their providers let them down. Again, delivered 35 attendees that one, and you can see our evaluation there. Again, this has been emailed to you. If not, let me know, and you can look at the details of that. I just know I've got 10 minutes, and as fast as I speak, I've got so much to say. But then since August 23, we have taken on the role of digital champions. So even though I say no more, we confused with digital champions, we somehow become them, and we offer support in the following 2 patients. So downloading of the NHS app, overview of the features, such as how to order repeat prescriptions, online consultations, and the features of a practice website to make sure they use a practice website instead of phoning up up at 8 AM at practice every day. And this has been quite well attended. You'll see it here. So we've delivered 37 sessions now to over 150 patients. We've actually done more than 150 patients, but some of them are just reluctant to give any feedback, so we can't monitor and track them and include them. But 153 have been happy for us to take that data. And then we're taking advanced booking, so we're currently booked all the way up to the end of December with training sessions. And some of these, it says there, we're working with the Digital Accelerator Change team to promote the NHS app and repeat prescriptions in a pharmacy location as well. And you see the feedback on there. 100% have given us 4 above, and then about 99% have either would use us again or recommend us to friend and family member. And you've got our patient-facing bar above as well. So again, it's early days with that. We're kind of building and growing and looking to get evenly spread across now as we progress. The other thing as well, which is a little bit different, we've got 2 members of our team who are so good at creating digital content, whether it be some of the webinars we do, or we have like cheat sheets which we create, and jargon busting and videos as well. I think I've got this one here, so you can kind of see. I won't play it, but they're voiceover videos, 2-3 minutes long, which will show you how to do things, and you can do it step by step alongside that video as well. So this is our kind of offer for any member of staff that's out of hours. We can't attend training between 9 and 5. Next slide then. So in terms of support to digital first, like I said, we've done website optimization, OCVC, and we're working with NHS app. We're working as well with the social prescribing work stream, which is to roll out the new template, and the NEL portal as well. We upload all training sessions, whether it be our teams or any of the other facilitation teams across NEL. And then the training hub as well. So you may have seen our training on website. It's a bit of an ongoing process, but that's basically done. And then again, if anything needs added to that, I've seen some things come from some borough leads. We'll update it as quick as we can. Diabetes program. So Suli and Jyoti will be proud to know that our short videos are basically finished. I'm hoping to send them across to you by the end of this week. And these were linked to that program. And then the City and Hackney training hub website we're building as well. The home landing page is complete our end, and then we're planning to add a page per month is our kind of able to do that successfully. And then the outcomes. So this, I'll link it to the 6 bullet points at the start. So substantial workforce is in place. Like I said, we've got a team of 13 now, and they've all got their own skill sets. Improved use of digital tools in primary care settings. 100% of people we've worked with on our evaluation say that they are achieving their desired outcomes following our team's training and using new systems and software. The ongoing acceptance of change. So every time we ask and do these training needs analysis, we ask, do you need support, digital support and training? The average is 90% say yes, we do need it. So this is quite a high number across now. And then work with practice managers to acknowledge their training needs. We've now actively worked with a third and had repeat bookings from a third of practice across now, whether that be a monthly drop-in session from us where we can go in and provide training, or if it's anything specific built to them. Deliver insights to practice, PCNs, boroughs, and NEL to support digital transformation. Like I said, we've done 4 training needs analysis then now today. That literally involves us going around to every practice across North East London as a team and finding out what their most pressing needs are. And then work closely with Digital First and the Training Hub. I just went through those 2 slides, and you've seen how we're working and collaborating with everyone. So here's our big number then, I guess. So since we started just over a year ago now, we've worked with over 1,000 people across North East London, whether it be patient, an in-person bespoke session, or on that 454 should say webinars. And then you can see our greens as well there in terms of whether they think we help them save time, money, resources, if they actively recommend us to colleagues in their practice and other practices, or achieving desired outcomes thanks to our work. Right, and then that's our kind of learning points. I'll take you to the bit on the right-hand side, you're always getting better. This is what we're actively working on, hopefully for life post-March as well, is that we're trying to get more and more even distribution, in particular with the patient-facing and our one-to-ones. We've seen our numbers for Newham Town Hamlets need to increase, and we're actively working on that at the minute. Maintain steady, realistic increase training month by month, and we've continued to do that. And then work with programs such as Digital First and the NEL Training Hub, and we're doing that as well. And then in terms of our training analysis, we're trying to get it so 75% of practices across now have an input rather than 50%, which we're currently working at the moment. And that brings me to the end. Whew, and breathe. Any questions from anybody?
Well, the whistle stop.
It is, isn't it?
Comprehensive, and I admire your ability to talk without breathing so often, Campbell. That was quite a tour de force. Jyoti Equable.
Thank you. My God, Campbell, that was amazing, actually. And it was really nice to see the slide where you showed BHR was topping the list and some of with the numbers, and normally have to hide and go somewhere, like my son's PTA. But this was brilliant. Campbell, just a couple of questions, and I think I've probably asked you this before in terms of alignment of the digital strategy at NEL level. How are we aligning ourselves? and which piece is missing. And then I know your team's there till March, is it, or April or something?
Yeah, till March, end of March.
So how are we sustaining that piece? Are we training the DFs at the PCN level? And actually, what are you guys going to do with 13, digital facilitators across? What are we going to do with that? It's probably a question, Ben, we might need to think outside of this meeting. Is we've got 13 trained people who already know the landscape of primary care. How do we ensure that we keep them in NEL? What do we do and what the PCNs are doing? So it'll be worth just looking at that wider question as well. Thank you, Campbell.
Okay, cool.
I mean, on that last, we have additional role reimbursement schemes for digital transformation managers, is that the right title? And a lot of PCNs don't have them. And it would appear to me that digital facilitators meet most, if not all, of the personal requirements for a really helpful role. So if I was a PCN manager, I'd be looking to snap up these people if the funding doesn't continue as it's planned to. But I think that's something we could potentially try and facilitate as well. So we can try and slot people in if that's what people want to do and that's what PCNs were looking for. I'm not sure who should hold that discussion. So perhaps Josie, you and I might need to pick that up as an action outside of this, see if we can do something with that. Yeah, I think about that one. Ekremol.
Thanks, Ben. Kamal, that was really amazing. 2 comments. One, probably question. I wasn't aware of the patient offer, so that's really good, because I missed it or I forgot, but I don't think I was aware of it. Second one, about the TNA, often, because we've been doing this for forever, really, haven't we, as training hubs, it's difficult to engage with TNAs, but what's really useful is those who do attend, as part of the feedback, you probably ask them what else do you need and require in terms of additional support. So that usually provides a lot of information and intelligence into the future planning and offer going forward. And the question is, and sorry, I popped out for a sec, take a call. Artificial intelligence, is that something that is requested in terms of awareness raising around AI? And have you looked at it internally within your team, or is that part of the long-term plan potentially? Just to raise the work, because it is happening, it is there. It's people are using it. AI and healthcare, just an introduction, because we've been talking about it as a NEL training hub. What can we do? What should we do? And we're a bit nervous because obviously it's a bit sensitive and it's a bit, there are some dangers. But do we have a role to play in terms of educating our workforce around AI?
Yeah, and obviously, especially with things like ChatGPT coming up, everyone seems to be using AI simply on their phones. It's one of those things where we are on standby. We've got essentially
AI, the importance of it, and the safety and security when using it. It's just a case of no one's actually requesting it. And as much as I would say we try and help, skew some people to go, or maybe you want to learn AI.
They're just not currently interested in it. That's what we're finding in our TNAs.
I was going to say, I think AI does have various different themes, and it means, what does AI mean to different people? And actually, what is it that we should be comfortably having conversations about, versus what should we probably not get into because it's not mature enough? So I guess, like Ekremol's point about, and your point, Campbell, about how much should we use AI in our general workings to get some general information that might help with patient care, for example. It could be useful, but then actually how much do we not rely upon AI to start to dictate some particular decisions? Conversely, there are AI conversations about how does AI help to reduce workload at practice level. So, whether it comes down to recording or reporting on particular blood test results or symptoms, and as Jyoti has mentioned about cancer, and how does AI support sort of lung MDTs and radiology and imaging, etc. So it looks like we probably need to have a bit more of an in-depth discussion. And I guess, Campbell, a lot of your time is taken up just doing that more simpler, I'm not going to say easy, but more simpler support to practices in terms of office suites and websites and everything else. And AI is, a little bit important, probably on the periphery of their
I think
needs.
it's also a confidence thing as well. If practice managers and members of staff are only just getting used to things like Microsoft Words, and I guess we'd call them more basic systems, it suddenly suggests AI can get them quite scared and a bit agitated.
Yeah.
Any more for any more? In which case, I'll say thank you so much, Campbell. That was a really helpful whistle-stop tour. There's so much work being done by your team. I think it's phenomenal what you've managed to achieve in less than a year. So thank you. And thank you everybody for a really helpful conversation today. I know it was not ideal circumstances with people on leave, no papers, and quite circumspect discussion at points, but I found it really helpful, and hopefully it's been a useful, gentle introduction, reintroduction to this meeting rhythm. Sarah will be chairing the next meeting and the December one, and then after that, we'll see how we get on. I think the dates have been circulated for that. Did anyone else have any AOBs they wanted to pick up before we wrap up? Mariam, I see a hand up.
Hi Ben. So my name is Mariam. I'm a Physician Associate Ambassador for North East London. I think while everyone is here today, I just want to quickly ask on the preceptorship. So I think there's various applications coming through different streams. One directly from training hubs, and then some from FedNet, and they're going straight to the PA London team. So as you're aware, the HE and NHS England had a recent merge. Just to keep on track of everything, I'd just like to know how's everyone processing applications, who's leading on that, and then how they get into the NHS England, because as you're aware, we only have 11 places this year for the financial year, and it'll just good to keep track of that and where we're at. So I do have the oversight from the NHS England team, which is allocated to me, but also I have another colleague who's supporting me on that. So it's just good to get some sort of idea where we're at.
I don't know if we're going to get an answer to that now, or is that something we need to take away? I can't see Jodie's face.
Just a takeaway, because I'll present in the next meeting. It's good to if all the program managers can get their numbers, or how many preceptees they have in the local boroughs. Next meeting, I will present with the overall numbers and where we're at and how we're currently managing the physician associate projects for NEL in particular, and then we can move forward from there. Thank
So
you.
I vaguely remember some of that goes into the KPI submission that's to go off shortly. So some of that would have been collated already, but let's take that as an action to try and discuss it with you outside the meeting, Mariam, ahead of the next one. Great. Okay. In that case, thank you all very much for your time. We finished on time, not early, but I'm still taking that as a win. And enjoy the rest of your afternoons, and we'll see you in December, sorry. Take care all.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.